On March the 13th, 1964, Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment in New York City. She was attacked by Winston Moseley 3 separate times within half an hour before being stabbed to death. According to reports, despite the presence of 38 witnesses, no one attempted to intervene to prevent Kitty's death. A couple of weeks after the murder, newspapers began speculating about the reasons behind this lack of intervention. The New York Times claimed this was due to the indifference of the bystanders, as well as a sense of moral decay and dehumanisation caused by the urban environment. However, Darley and Latane proposed a different explanation for this behaviour, which has come to be known as the bystander effect, or Genovese syndrome. This is the concept that the probability of a witness helping a victim decreases as the number of bystanders increases. Reasons for this effect include the sharing of guilt when no other witnesses offer help. In addition, witnesses may be conforming to the passive normative behaviour of other people, which may lead them to believe that no help is needed. Darley and Latane performed a series of investigations to test this theory. In one of these, they tested whether the perceived number of witnesses would affect the likelihood of a college student reporting a staged seizure. The student believed that they were communicating with other participants via an intercom system, under the pretext of participating in an anonymous discussion about college life. In reality, they were listening to a series of tape recordings. Darley and Latane manipulated the number of participants the naive subject believed to be taking part in the experiment. Halfway into the discussion, one of the voices they could hear became increasingly incoherent as the victim staged a fit. The percentage of participants who reported the fit, as well as speed of response, decreased as the perceived group size increased. These results provided evidence for the bystander effect. The media reports surrounding Kitty's death have been criticised as being exaggerated. In reality, the number of eyewitnesses was lower than 38, and the police were called at least once. Nonetheless, the incident promoted investigations into the bystander effect, which has become a recognised phenomenon. The theory has been popularised through YouTube in videos which portray the response of public members to people in an apparent state of distress, often seen lying on the street.
72 students took part in the study. This included 59 females and 13 males. They believe they were taking part in a discussion about college life, which would be held over an intercom system to avoid embarrassment. There are 3 conditions in the study. In the first condition, the participant took part in discussion with one other person. In the second condition, there were 2 other people in discussion, and in the third condition, there were 5 other people who took part in the discussion. So the participants were taken individually into a room. Each of the subjects had 2 minutes to talk, and they believed that their microphones would be turned off at the end of this 2 minutes. All of the other subjects in the discussion were in fact Confederates, and their voices had been tape recorded. Participants were told that the experimenter would not be listening to the discussion to remove the obviously responsible experimenter from the scene of the emergency. During the discussion, the future victim spoke first, mentioning that he was prone to seizures. Then, when it was the victim's turn to talk again, he became increasingly incoherent. The victim's speech was abruptly cut off after 125 seconds, which could be interpreted by the participants as being the end of his time to talk. The experimenter began timing how long it took for the participant to get help from the beginning of the victim's speech. If 6 minutes passed before the participant going to get help, the experiment was ended. Variations of these 3 conditions were also conducted. For instance, variations of a 3-person group were run. In one condition, the taped bystander was a female, in another a male, and in the third a male who said he was a pre-medical student. In these conditions, the participants were female, and another final condition where the male participants were tested in a 3-person female bystander condition. Also, variations were made in the order in which the subject spoke in the 6-person group. In the first discussion round, to see if this affected the participants' speed of report. This had no noticeable effect on the speed of reporting the emergency.
For the results of this study, the hypothesis that increased number of perceived bystanders lowered the participants' intervention rates and responding speed was supported by the findings. As you can see in this table, 85% of participants in the 2-person group condition responded by the end of the fit. Then the percentage dropped to 62 and 31 in the 3-person group and 6-person group conditions respectively. This showed that increased number of bystanders lowered the participants' intervention rates, while for the speed of response, in the 2-person group condition, the participants responded 52 seconds in average after the start of the fit. Longer time was taken by the participants in the 3-person group condition and 6-person group condition to respond. All participants who reported defeat did so within 3 minutes after. All participants who reported defeat did so within 3 minutes after the start of defeat. Moreover, this table shows the effects of group composition on likelihood and speed of response. Female participants' percentage of responding was the same, which was 62%, no matter the other bystander was a female or a male. Also, as shown in this graph, male and female participants' responding speeds were similar. Female participants responded equally fast no matter the bystanders were normal male students or pre-medical male students. This showed that the gender and the identity of bystanders did not have an important effect on the frequency and the speed of participants' responses. Furthermore, personality was found to have no significant impacts on the speed of reporting defeat in different group conditions. A 15-item checklist was used to investigate the thoughts they had in their mind when hearing the victim asking for help. There's no significant differences in the kind of thoughts were found.
Darley and Latane's study was the first investigating the bystander effect, and is regarded as the foundation of research in this area. Their work contradicted media reports that the lack of intervention in the Kitty Genovese case was due to apathy and moral decay due to the urban environment. Their work also used objective measures in that it investigated how the time taken to report the fit changed when the group size changed, and this helped to increase the validity of their results. They proposed that there were several factors that contributed to the bystander effect. One of these was the diffusion of responsibility, which is where when bystanders assume that other people will intervene, their guilt is shared when they don't take action. In addition, there's a theory of pluralistic ignorance, which occurs through the assumption that no interference is needed because other bystanders aren't taking any action. There's also an element of evaluation apprehension, in that bystanders fear that they will be judged by other bystanders when they take action to intervene. The studies increased awareness of the bystander effect, which is important as research has shown that being aware of the bystander effect makes you more likely to take action in a dangerous situation.
Despite the significant findings of the study, which supported novel explanations of why witnesses don't help in a crisis, there were some criticisms which may limit the reliability of the results.
There was a gender imbalance in that 59 participants were female and only 13 male. In 1986, Eagley and Crowley found that men are more likely to perceive in situations that are perceived as dangerous than women, so this gender imbalance may affect the validity of the study's results. In addition, Darley and Latane found that group composition have no effect on the time taken to respond to the fit, whereas in a meta-analysis, Fisher et al. Found that people are more likely to intervene if other bystanders are male, as they believe that they would be more able to help if the situation turned dangerous. Also, the experiment was conducted in an artificial environment, which does not reflect the real situation of a crisis. The experimental setup may have led people to believe that other people would be able to witness the seizure occurring. In addition, bystanders were not able to communicate in this situation, which would be possible in the case of a real crisis. There are also other explanations to the normative behaviour of the bystanders, other than the bystander effect. For example, bystanders may believe that interfering would be unhelpful if they are not medically trained. They may also fear being superseded when someone who is medically trained takes over, which may prevent them from intervening in the first case. Finally, they may fear legal consequences of intervening if this turns out to be dangerous.
The study can be criticised in terms of the ethics of the research. Participants were deceived in many ways through believing the purpose of the discussion was to gather information about college life, and being deceived into believing a member of the discussion was having a fit. As a result of this deception, informed consent could therefore not be gained as participants were not aware of the true nature of the study. An additional ethical concern with the study is the fact that the situation caused many of the participants some form of distress, with many of the participants showing signs of nervousness, including trembling hands and sweating palms. Nevertheless, despite the participants experiencing stress and conflict during the experiment, their general reactions to the study were highly positive. A questionnaire administered after the experiment revealed the true nature and purpose of the study, showed that every participant found the experiment interesting and was willing to participate in future research. In addition, all of the participants thought that deception was necessary and justified. Therefore, despite the fact that the study broke some of the ethical guidelines through deceiving the participants and the distress experienced during the experiment, these were arguably justified and did not have a negative impact on the participants in the long term.
Manning, Latane, and Collins in 2007 criticized Darley and Latane's bystander effects that Kitty's incident was misconceived, and not all of the 38 witnesses could see the attack, and instead they heard the scream and none of them watched the whole episode. And there were only 3 eyewitnesses engaged in the trials, and they reported that they did not know there was a murder, as they did not see the stabbing. And moreover, some people actually helped by shouting and calling the police, even there is no 911 system in the 1964. And therefore, Manning and Latane and Collins argued that the bystander effect was developed based on misconceived information, and Darley and Latane often referred back to the incident as a backup. So, but however, bystander effect would not be affected by whether the incident was true or not, and there are still many people supporting this effect. And for the second criticism, they claim that bystander effect leads to the shift of attention to the psychological impacts of the presence of others instead of the violence itself, which is a more critical issue that should be concerned.
Although there were weaknesses in this study, the bystander effect has proven to be one of the most replicable results in social psychology. The bystander effect is even more prominent in non-emergency situations, according to Fisher's 2011 meta-analysis. In 2000, Markey found that the higher the number of people present in an internet chat group, the longer it took for an individual to receive technological assistance when they seek help. In addition, other studies by Latane and Darley support the bystander effect. They conducted another experiment in 1968, in which they recorded the length of time students took to notice smoke entering a room whilst completing a questionnaire. When alone, 75% of students reported the smoke, compared to only 10% when they were in a group with passive bystanders.
From this study, Latane and Darley propose that in the case of an emergency, individuals undergo a cognitive process before deciding whether or not to intervene. The first step to this process is the individual noticing the event. They then must interpret it as an emergency and decide that it is their personal responsibility to act. Latane and Darley suggest that at each stage a bystander can remove themselves from the decision process and therefore fail to help. Based on this model, Darley and Latane suggest that the greater failure to intervene and report the seizure in the case of a larger number of bystanders was a result of a diffusion of responsibility. The participants were less likely to intervene the more bystanders there were because they felt less personal responsibility for helping because the responsibility was shared by others. Overall, the results from this show that personality variables such as a lack of empathy are not the primary reason for the lack of intervention in the case of emergencies, as previously thought. As a result, the study has contributed greatly to understanding why individuals may not provide help in the case of an emergency, and more specifically how the presence of others may affect this. While the study can be criticised in certain aspects, it has a number of practical applications and has provided a valuable contribution to the understanding of the bystander effect.